Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to All Souls, where love is the spirit of our community. Even as we are forced to come together online, please know, every one of you, that you matter to this community. In this time of great division, may you find hope here, may you find love here, and may you find community here. Today is when this is the time where we usually would start talking to each other in person in the pews, right? But instead, let's go invite you to go to the chat, introduce yourself in the chat to each other, and include one word, if you will, about how you feel.
And where is the chat?
I'm doing
I'm
YouTube
sorry.
on my phone for church. Or
The
Zoom.
chat is at the bottom of your screen, should be about towards the left-hand kind of middle of in the middle left a little.
Microphone. Sing the system. A speaker. No. No.
Okay, well, as everybody continues to introduce themselves in the chat, myself, good morning. My name is Fran Quigley. My pronouns are he, him, and I am your virtual worship associate for today's service, together with Nancy Olson, our Director of Congregational Life and Faith Formation, and Liz Elsmore, our Music Director, pronouns she, her. We are your worship team today. Our Senior Minister, Reverend Katie Romano Griffin, is having a regular Sunday off this week, and she will be on vacation next week. We will see her back in the pulpit on February 8th. But today, please help me in welcoming back the Reverend Mary Ann Macklin. We have heard
thyroid or kidney issues, high blood pressure, Parkinson's.
To have Reverend Mary Ann back again. Usually, again, at this time, we usually invite everyone to complete these physical connection cards. But instead, today, we have put into the chat the contact information for both the Contact Us page on our website, but also the pastoral care email Reverend Katie put in at the very top of the chat. I wonder whether we have to put it in again after people join, but it's pastoral care at allsoulsindy.org. So if you have an interest or comment or question, or if you need support, that's the place to reach out. For a few quick announcements before we get really rolling, we encourage folks on Zoom to stay in speaker view mode until coffee hour. We are going to have coffee hour after the service, and Nancy Olson is going to host the chat for all of us. If you keep it on speaker mode, that usually provides a better viewing experience. And of course, we ask you to remember to keep muted during service, and you absolutely don't have to be muted during coffee hour. We want people not to be muted during coffee hour. As a follow-up to our conversation on January 11th, and unfortunately it's way too timely when we talked about ICE, we encourage you, if you're looking for more information about what's going on in our community, we encourage you to follow these organizations on social media. Indy Rapid Response, Indy Protest Finders, or Undocumented Youth Alliance Indianapolis. Those names are also included in the know. So if you didn't catch that, again, Indy Rapid Response, Indy Protest Finders, and Undocumented Youth Alliance. One other announcement is that the Chalice Circles for this winter and spring are going to be two, Writing Your Way Through Elderhood, which is going to be held 6 Tuesday mornings starting February 10th, starting at 10 a.m. in the All Souls Library in person, and Nancy Olson will be the facilitator. There is also going to be a Zoom Chalice Circle for caregivers finding support through writing, That's going to be meeting for 6 Thursdays, starting on February 5th in the evening, starting at 7 p.m. Also facilitated by Nancy Olson. And unsurprisingly, if you want more information, guess who you should contact? Nancy Olson. And there's also more information in the note. We also, if you would, ask you to let us know in the chat if you received 1 or 2 emails yesterday about this pivot to Zoom service and the building closure. We want to make sure that our outreach is getting to everyone who needs to know when there are changes and announcements like this. So, also as we begin our we acknowledge the land itself and those who have sustained it through the generations.
Amen.
At All Souls, we are upon the unceded Shawnee and the Kickapoo people who are pushed from their land and whose children have been stolen for generations. We are striving to be a community of justice, so may we find ways to make reparations. Our call to worship today are from the words of John Elwood. Forget about enlightenment. Sit down wherever you are and listen to the wind singing in your veins. Feel the love, the longing, the fear in your bones. Open your heart to who you are right now, not who you would like to be.
Well, I just got in right now.
But the being right here before you.
Oh, to church? But it's most of the way over.
All of you is holy. You are already more and less than whatever you can know. Breathe out, touch in, let go. Let us worship.
Thank you, Fran. And if you are not muted, or if we were not able to get you muted, please check that left-hand corner, I think, that says has your sound muted. Welcome, everyone. I have a chalice here that I will light from here.
And the volume's not working.
This ritual of lighting our chalice reminds us to continually renew our promise to live into our covenant, to put love into action, and to live out this community of love and justice that we aim to be. So as we share these words printed in our order of service in Spanish and English, please feel free to light your own chalice. And we will read the words in Spanish first. And again, you can just stay muted. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio es su ley. Vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad en el amor, y ayudarnos unos a otros. Este es nuestro pacto. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. To dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. This is our covenant. Thank you. So Marianne and I had planned to have a story for you today where we were going to act it out. We're going to act that out. We're also going to have some visuals. Given our pivot, and though we are incredibly grateful to have Zoom so that we can all, so far 54 of us, be together, I'm going to tell the story and also do a short little visual. So we'll see how it works. We'll try. This is a very short story because it is a Zen story. And any of you who are familiar with Zen stories know that Zen stories tend to be very short, full, chock full of wisdom. And this story, you may have heard it. The title of this story is The Cup of Tea. And so there are many versions of this. And one of the versions talks about Nanin, who was a Japanese master. And during the 1860s to 1912s, and he was very well known for his wisdom. And many people came to him to ask many questions and to find out how Zen and his wisdom could improve their lives. One time, a university professor came to inquire about Zen. This university professor had been teaching for many years, and he knew he was very learned. But he wanted to come and see what Zen might also have to offer him. And so when when the professor sat down, Nanin said, "We shall have some tea." And I'm going to see if you can see the tea I have right here. Let's see. Not quite. Uh, 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 uh.
Liz, can we be on speaker mode so we can see a little?
There we go. All right. So, Nanin invited the professor to tea, and Nanin began to pour the tea. And he poured, and he poured, and he poured, and he kept pouring, and pouring, and pouring, and pouring, and the teacup kept filling over, and spilling over, and spilling over, and the professor said, "Stop! Stop! It's overfull. No more will go in here." Nanin sat there. Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and your own speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup? The Cup of Tea, an old Zen Buddhist story.
Thank you, Nancy. That was lovely. Please join me in taking a few moments to note that which is currently bringing joy or sorrow to our community. We keep in our hearts Tamika and Herman Saller. Herman had an emergency surgery and needs healing. Alex Preddy, an ICU nurse who was trying to help an elder being shoved by ICE agents, was killed by ICE agents in Minneapolis yesterday. So we hold in our hearts all who are impacted by ICE violence. Those include our own neighbors here in Indianapolis, as ICE has been reported in Windsor Park on the Near East Side, as well as other areas of Indiana this past week. We pray for the families of all who have been held and for those who survived the people who have been killed by ICE on our streets and through unjust incarceration and deportation. We thank our UU religious leaders who remain steady and present at key locations, that includes Minneapolis, to rally against these injustices. We will keep fighting for justice and democracy. Reverend Katie is not here with us today, but she wants us to know this. Our UUA Vice President, the Reverend Ashley Horan, who lives in Minneapolis, reminded live viewers on Facebook last night to organize where we live. We can do this by meeting our neighbors. We can do this by getting on Signal chats. We can do this by preparing to provide mutual aid in our communities. Our All Souls Food Pantry is just one example of mutual aid. We can get connected to the Indy Action Network and the Black Church Coalition, which has already been for many months advocating for ICE eradication in our community. We can get connected to them through Reverend Katie and through Lynn Martin. There are things we can do. Reverend Katie also reminds us that we are present to this dangerous weather. If you are without heat or electricity, if you're without water or gas, please remember that while we are not an emergency shelter, as an All Souls community member, you are welcome to come to the building. You're welcome to come warm up, to charge your devices, to use the restroom, cook food, and to eat. If you need support, or if you need emergency housing, please also contact the pastoral care team. We put that email in the chat previously. We'll put it in again. It's pastoralcare@allsoulsindy.org. Or you can call the office, 317-545-6005, 317-545-6005. If you have some extra space in your home and an All Souls member is in need of a place to stay, please let the pastoral care team know. Now let us hold a moment of silence together for the joys and sorrows in our hearts that have not yet been named. Thank you. We are now going to be blessed to be heard, to hear from Reverend Mary Ann Macklin. Many of us have already enjoyed Reverend Mary Ann's reflections and services in the past, but if you haven't, a little background. Reverend Mary Ann has been a UU minister in Bloomington, Indiana, and congregations in Madison, Wisconsin, and Louisville, Kentucky, and is now currently deeply snowed in Bloomington, Indiana. So we're grateful for the miracle of Zoom so that we have a chance to hear from Reverend Mary Ann today.
Thanks, Fran. And again, I thank Reverend Katie for inviting me into the pulpit. It really is an honor to be here, and I'm so glad we decided to do Zoom today. And instead of just having a cancellation, it's just wonderful to be together. And I like repeating things because I feel like as the worship service goes on, we deepen the meaning. And I'm going to repeat the opening words that Fran offered earlier, just to go another level deeper. The words of John Wellwood: forget about enlightenment, sit down wherever you are, and listen to the wind singing in your veins. Feel the love, the longing, the fear in your bones. Open your heart to who you are right now. Not who you would like to be, not the saint you're striving to become, but the being right here before you, inside you, around you. All of you is holy. You are already more and less than whatever you can know. So breathe out and then go in and then let go as we continue our worship together. I also, as we enter this moment time together, want to thank Reverend Katie and Fran for the words about ICE. I know it is in our being, our concerns, outrage. And I wanted to let you know about an article that just came out in the UU World, our Unitarian Universalist Association magazine. It's called "In a Show of Moral Clarity, UU's Join ICE Out Demonstration in Minneapolis." And I just wanted to mention, because it's good to know what's happening out there, that a number of ministers, directors of religious education, educators, ministers of religious education, UU professionals, UU lay people went to Minneapolis and were there on Friday. They were actually there before and gathering and showing support with an interfaith community. What struck me and what strikes me about your congregation is a lot of what you're doing already, because it builds your capacity, all the things that Fran was talking about earlier. So when the moment comes for you in knowing when to choose, what to do, you'll just know. You build your capacity. And these words come from, there's a lot of Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association. A number of our staff live in Minneapolis, or other folks who are leaders. And one of those is Black Lives of UU Executive Director Lena Gardner. And she said this: I want people to understand the truth of the hardship we're facing. And I want them to know the truth of the resilience we are building. People are coming together here in Minneapolis in new ways to help support our immigrant community and each other, making meals, paying people's rents because they can't go to work, giving children rides to school, giving people rides to doctors' offices. These are all things we were not doing before ICE invaded our city. And as Reverend Katie and Fran, in their words earlier, said, start building these connections now, because when ICE or another government entity comes into your city, which is already in Indy, you'll be more ready. I would say your capacity is being built as an individual, as a community. You'll be more connected, and more connected people are safer. More connected people are harder to repress. And one of the pieces that I remember, there's something called cultural relation theory, that isolation is the building block of oppression. That's why I have supported and helped build and been a part of congregations most of my life. We cannot isolate ourselves. So I'm speaking to all of you here, and if you maybe notice somebody who's not here today, reach out to them and just check in. Because of the weather, because of everything happening in the world, keep checking in on each other. And as new people come, if you're new today, welcome to this community. We embrace you into a place where love is the spirit of this church. So thank you. You may have already noticed there hasn't been any music because it's a little difficult on Zoom to have music. And we're going to have some in a little bit, not quite yet. Um, One of the things I wanted to do was a movement meditation, and you can choose how you want to do it. You can stand up with me. You can, as you're able, you can be seated to do this. I'm going to stand. Um, and I'm going to do this a couple of times throughout the worship service, just because we didn't get a walk in with each other or stroll in or roll in, however we move. We arrived here electronically, and I like having an embodied worship. And so I'm going to try that now. And the words are earth, courage, calm, abiding. I want to be talking about Buddhism, particularly Zen today. This is from more the Tibetan Shambhala side, but it's something that I was taught, and there's a much longer yoga practice with this, but I like this short piece because it is grounding. So I'm going to turn my camera, back it up a little bit. Um, and uh, I'm going to tell you, behind me is my closet that I took the doors off of. And yes, it's where I store all my Star Trek stuff. So if you're sitting going, what is all that stuff behind Reverend Macklin? It's like my Star Trek stole and the Klingon hat, and there's Spock, and there's Captain Janeway. This is a Borg cube. If nothing of that means anything to you, congratulations. But I thought, I don't want you to have to figure that out while I'm trying to teach you a meditation. So blessings upon you. Live long and prosper. Okay. So here is this very simple movement. And again, the reason I like this is because you can do it anywhere. You could just be standing and doing it. You wouldn't even have to do the movement. But the movement is your gaze is down first. It is grounding. Your hands are at your side, and you're looking down in many ways to earth. And that's what you say, earth. You gaze down, and you can even lean over if you want to and touch or get near touching the earth, our mother. We are her children, and just feel yourself grounded into earth. So the gaze is down because this was an inward time. This is a connection. And then if you are leaning over, you slide your hands up on your thighs. And then you look right at the horizon, because this is where we are facing the realness of the world. And it's you can even put your hands on your hips, because you're saying courage. Courage in the heart. Your heart is there in all four chambers. So you've gone from earth, very inward, and now you're outward, courage. And then the last one is more of a look upward, the connectedness to everything. It is that place of, I almost feel my body relax back into spirit here. And the words are calm, abiding. calm abiding. So it would go earth, courage, calm abiding. Do it one more time together. Earth. Again, connecting, grounding. Taking a deep breath. And then coming into yourself, into your heart. Courage. And then letting go a little and leaning back into spirit. Into the calmer part of ourself. Calm abiding. Thank you. As I said, I'll do that a couple of times in this, and just to bring us into what we're going to do. In the introduction for today, if any of you saw this, I said, through story and embodied meditation, this worship service will explore spiritual strategies for living in these challenging times in our country and world. And I said I'd use the lens of Zen Buddhism or Buddhism in general. I am not an expert in this area, nor technically, I think, is anybody truly. I think that's the way I look at it. Um, there's two main stories that I want to keep coming back to. The first one is the one that Nancy shared earlier, the cup of tea, and that how do we empty our cup? And what are we emptying our cup of? You know, part of it is the way we see things. How do we see it differently? What we're experiencing, many of us, people have been experiencing this for a long time, but the loss of expectation about how we thought life worked, the loss of democracy and how we thought that might work. Um, and that can empty our cup, our all the knowledge we've had sometimes, and it may not, it gets tripped up, and that can empty our cup, or we simply empty the cup ourselves and say, maybe I don't know. Emptiness itself can overpower our senses. I mean, like, you know, the spiritual practice of gratitude, if we're feeling empty, sometimes it just covers that. In a Zen primer, it says, a space that was filled, whether in our lives or our hearts, can become void, and the feeling can sometimes be difficult to bear. So too often we find ourselves trying to fill this void or emptiness, right? It happens before we even get a chance to see if it's a path to opening. And I want you to remember that because I'm going to be talking about that. So we're in this void and we stop it. We don't go down deeper in case there might be a path to opening, to foster a balance between finding acceptance of what is and gratitude. So we need moments of quiet reflection. We need to breathe and allow, and that's what today's worship service hopefully will bring to you. And I wanted to start off with one piece about Zen, and it says, the secret of Zen is just two words, not always so. The secret of Zen is just two words, not always so. That's from Shunryu Suzuki Roshi, and it just reminds me of that's what we're trying to do is get deeper into ourselves, into a new way of seeing things, a new way of being in the world that does not have our old patterns and conceptions there. So those are some introductory words. And that earlier, I'm going to do it again, and then we're going to hear a little bit of music. And the music we're going to hear, I texted a friend last night and I said, do you have a copy of that music you wrote for Earth, Courage, Come Abiding? And it's about 9:30 last night, and she got on GarageBand and actually made a little clip of it. And what I like about it, it has it goes, it lowers ourselves every time she repeats it, and you'll hear that. So I'm going to do the movement meditation, and if it works, Liz is going to try to put that music in there. If it doesn't work, I might try to hum it for you, but that might be sad. Um, um, so we'll try that. I just love the space that music creates, and it's hard on Zoom because you have to get copyright and everything. But my friend Sarah Flint said, "Of course, you can play my GarageBand version of this," and so we'll see if that works, and if not, I'll just talk you through a little bit of that. So here we go again. And just start with the breath. Ooh, just let us be in our bodies, these bodies, these vehicles for us. And our gaze goes down and we connect with the earth. So no matter where you are, you can do this. Earth, I go down. Ear inward. And then you bring your heart and you are looking right directly into what is courage. And then a breath. Let those shoulders drop. Calm abiding. And yes, I haven't used that while being at protests. I have used it before going into a difficult meeting. I have used it just standing outside at night. I'm a person who likes to go out into the night and be with the beings of all around, and that's a beautiful, beautiful movement meditation to have it, or early morning, or any time of the day. So. Liz, let's see if we can do that. And some of you, I know different settings on different computers. We'll just see if this enhances our experience, and if not, we'll move on. But let's try it out. And thanks to Sarah Flint.
Liz, does it matter that you're on mute?
It's a good question. And so you hear it coming down, and that's what's in my being when I'm doing that a lot. It's that earth, and then it comes, and then it goes down another one, and I feel myself sink down into my body. I feel myself kind of relax more, that soft belly meditation that can be there. And for those of you that could hear that, I just wanted you to have that as part of this practice. So thank you. Now then we're going to get into the sermon part of today. And there really are three parts to this. The first is a story, and it is about a mountain climbing accident. So I wanted you to know that, if that's a tender space. But it's winter. It is a wintry story. So it seems very appropriate that we would be able to relate to the environment of this story today. And it is about one of my favorite docudramas and books that are out there. And I find myself in my ministry coming back to this story a lot. It's from the book called Touching the Void. I don't know if any of you have heard of that. It's also been made into a docudrama series. And I'd like to share my summation of that with you right now. Touching the Void is about two mountain climbers, Joe and Simon, who climb a not too far summited 21,000 feet peak in the Peruvian Andes. They climb alpine style. Aside from their base camp at the bottom, they are on their own on this glacial climb. They reach the pristine summit, but on the way back down, tragedy strikes. Joe falls and breaks his leg, which is by most standards a death knell under such conditions. He expects Simon to leave him and save his own life, but Simon does not. He creates a way to slowly lower Joe down the precipitous mountainside 300 feet at a time. So they do this over and over across the snow. At one point, Joe slides off a cliff and then is dangling. So Simon is up here. What he does is he digs down, and then Joe slides down. And what happens is Joe goes off a cliff. Simon can't move. If he tries to move, he's going to go off the cliff. And Joe is dangling down there. So this is one of those places of choice. If Simon moves, he's in danger of sliding off the mountain itself because he's acting as an anchor further up the mountain due to Joe's dead weight on the other end. They cannot see or hear each other because it has started to snow and there's a lot of wind, and neither can move. And night is arriving. Temperatures, as we know, can dangerously plummet. So after an hour or so frozen in his position, Simon makes a very difficult decision. He's the anchor, right? He cuts the rope linking him to his companion. And then Joe falls into a crevasse. And then a crevasse is a deep fissure, a dark abyss in the ice. Simon assumes his friend is dead, and he creates a snow cave for himself to get through the night. He must deal with his life and death decision to cut the rope that night on the rest of his climb down and the rest of his life. The remarkable thing is Joe survives an over 150 feet fall. He finds himself on an ice ledge in the dark, an emptiness of the crevasse. As night ensues, the darkness deepens, and Joe spends a maddening night of pain and suffering, loneliness on that ice ledge. I think some of us have felt that sometimes. In the morning, Joe can see light from above. So he looks up in the morning. He's gone down and can see light from above where he fell. He knows that Simon has gone, and Simon did stay for a long time, yelling, just trying to make sure, but he never could hear from Joe. So after securing an ice screw in the wall for his rope, he tries to find holding so he might be able to climb out, but the glacial walls simply will not permit it. So Joe is there on this little ledge, frostbitten, broken leg, suffering from hypothermia. And he knows he will not spend another night on the ledge. In his words, I wasn't going to go through that again, but I cringed from doing the only thing left to me. Just almost without deciding, I took some coils in my hand and threw the rope to the right. In this action, Joe decides to lower himself further into the darkness, the indefinite void beneath him. He knows if there is empty space at the end of the rope, he will not be able to climb back up, so he leaves the end of the rope unknotted. As he lowers himself into the unknown, his sense of dread intensifies. He said he was nearly paralyzed with fear and recalls, inside I was screaming, stop, stop, but he continues to slowly lower himself into the emptiness. And time seems like an eternity. And then, to his astonishment, he finds the end of the rope lying on a snow beneath him. He lowers onto this platform of snow, which he soon discovers is not solid ground, but a snow shelf with dark emptiness below it. He glances to the side, and that's where he sees a small shaft of light coming down from the snow shelf, from a hole just above it and to his right. Now, he's not at the top of the mountain. This shaft of light, this incoming light, is coming from the side or the bottom of the mountain. He decides then to climb across that groundless snow shelf. And he can hear the pieces of the snow break off and fall below as he slowly goes across. After many, many hours of careful, painful climbing, he makes his way to that small, sun-filled hole. He pops his head through and emerges from the crevasse. And this is what he said. The ring of the mountain surrounding the glacier was so spectacular that I hardly recognized what I was seeing. The familiar peaks had taken on a beauty I had never noticed before. There wasn't a cloud in the sky, and the sun glared from its azure emptiness with ferocious heat. That's our story. That's the end of part 1. And I'm going to do a movement meditation with you. Join me in however you like. Simply this: deep breath, all those images in our mind, and lower our gaze and ground earth. And then looking up, courage, and leaning back, calm, abiding. And if you can still hear that music, and it just lowers yourself into the moment. Now a little more didactical form. Zen. Zen Buddhism, which originated in India, is thought to have slowly spread to China beginning in the 2nd century. There it mingled with Taoism and Confucianism and became a new school of Buddhism pronounced Chen. Later, the Japanese pronounced it Zen. A common story of the beginning of Zen begins with the Buddha himself. The Buddha is offering a teaching on a mountain peak, and during the talk he pauses and holds up a flower. His students remain quiet except for one, who breaks into a wide smile. The Buddha names this student his successor. Zen, which is meditation-based, is known to be pithy, stripped down, determined, uncompromising, a kind of cut-to-the-chase kind of Buddhism. Zen is somewhat about being open to the present moment without conscious control, but those are words, and so they feel so limited. Meditation is a tool to such presence of being. And so our Zen koans, those pithy little sayings, some of us have heard what is the sound of one hand clapping, and it's not an idea to come up with the answer, it's to enter the question. A student can spend years or a lifetime with a koan and a teacher, and at certain moments throughout, the intellectual rope snaps and some type of insight is gained. The celebrated founder of Zen in China, Bodhidharma, in the 6th century, is said to have been brought to the wealthy emperor to answer some questions about Zen. According to the teachings, the emperor asked the scowling Bodhidharma, how do I understand the merit I have accrued in building Zen temples and making all the donations to the monks? And Bodhidharma said, there is no merit. There is no merit, the emperor replied. The emperor sounds familiar, but I won't go into that. There is no emperor. Then what is the meaning of the Buddha's holy truths? Bodhidharma just said, empty, nothing, holy. Shocked, the emperor replied, who addresses me thus? Bodhidharma said, I don't know. And he left and went to a distant monastery, and then he allegedly sat in meditation before a bare wall for 9 years. So that is a Zen story. So I just fed the intellect a little while. I did some more story. We still have the story of Joe and Simon. So let's ground. Do that one more time. Again, deep breath in and out. And the gaze is down. Birth. The gaze comes up. We're trying to look at what is. It's not our prejudices. Or noticing our fears, or noticing our enjoyments, whatever it is. Courage to see what is. And then going into the larger aspect, calm abiding. Mm. Mm. So may it be. I always think with sermons like this, I could have just sat here and quiet the entire time, and we may have gotten the same wisdom. But I don't know if All Souls would send me a check for that. I should try it sometime and see what happens. The third part I call now. So we've had the story, we've had the Zen, we've had now. Now you may be wondering, so what's all this talk of emptiness, groundlessness? What does it have to do with me right here, with everything that's happening in the world, my journey, our spirituality as a congregation? I'm going to turn to the American Buddhist nun Pema Chodron now, who studied with a Tibetan Buddhist master. This comes from her book, The Places That Scare You, A Guide to Fearlessness in Difficult Times, where she addresses the times in our lives when we discover that we may no longer quite get the same comfort that we used to get from doing things. That could be like eating a pizza or watching a video. None of these are not quite as pleasurable because we are shifting and changing in. It's just that they don't always deal with the type of suffering and emptiness we eventually encounter in life, Chodron says. If we just learned, maybe like that we have a terminal illness, or if we just learned what's going on in Minnesota, it might be eating a pizza doesn't quite cheer us up. Or if someone we loved has died or going through a difficulty, the outer places for comfort sometimes feel a little feeble and ephemeral. So we learn that some of the immediate short-term pleasurable things we used to turn to deal with our suffering, and that for many of us could be eating, overworking, sometimes it's drugs, computers, television, may leave us emptier than when we began. We also may know about the joyfulness of awakening when we begin to look to trust the openness of our minds, hearts, and openness, unpredictably, uncertainty of life. It's like we are simultaneously lowering ourselves down that rope like Joe into the abyss. And then we get to poke our head out of the snow to see the beautiful mountain ranges we'd never seen before. Children teaches us, and I include myself here, most of us are in an in-between state. It's a place of groundlessness. It's kind of like that snowy shelf he was crawling across. You know, like you're aware of the crevasse and the void and the emptiness below you. You've been there, you've returned, and you're aware of the sun-filled hold and that spectacular ring of mountains, that absolute presence with the beauty and splendor and sacredness of everything. You've been there before and you've returned. Remember when Joe said the familiar peaks had taken on a beauty I had never noticed before. There wasn't a cloud in the sky, and the sun glared from its azure emptiness with ferocious heat. That azure emptiness, I believe, is what Buddhists refer to when they say deep seeing. We are with the sacred that is there. It is the penetration into the basic nature of everything. You would say the interconnected web, but you see it, you experience it. Most often that happens in nature. You might call it a luminosity emptiness. It doesn't push away suffering, but it sees how suffering creates itself, and then there is a letting go of expectations, part of the path of deep seeing. And that luminosity can be meditation, because that's what you're doing a lot. You're letting go of ways that your mind is patterned to think. Sangyang Mipham Rinpoche says, sometimes people tell me emptiness is just too much for me to understand. And they say, well, that's the kind of the point of emptiness. We're not supposed to understand it. It transcends the extreme views of existence, non-existence, both, neither. This emptiness is inseparable from the wisdom inherent in our own being. We have that. We have that radiance and compassion inside ourselves. It is there. That is one thing I know deep in my bones. Whether we're connected with it at the time, that radiance, that compassion is in us. And I may have said this before, that's the beauty of congregation. Sometimes we can't quite touch that, but somebody else can bring it to us so we can reconnect. This suchness of nature is called the basic goodness in Buddhism. There is that paradoxical in-between state, like I said before, that most spiritual seekers hang out in. And that's a place that is marked by tenderness, heartbreak, and anxiety. I know these well. So our task, as I see it, is learning to get used to the groundlessness of that shelf of snow. We can't always be in bliss and enlightenment and seeing the world exactly that deep seeing, nor do we have to be in the void of emptiness. We are there together. What is the challenge of that in-between state? Chodron again says, the challenge is to stay in the middle rather than to buy into the struggle and also complain and blame, which is a bummer because, you know, we all like to complain and blame things. The challenge is to let it soften us rather than to make us more rigid and afraid. Becoming intimate with those feelings in the middle of ourselves, in our hearts, that more tender place. When we are brave enough to stay in the middle, compassion arises then spontaneously. By not knowing and hoping to know and not acting like we know what is happening, That's where we access that inner strength, that place. It's about staying with the paradox of our humanity, that softness, that bodhicitta in the heart. So it's not all ecstatic wonder and that pain. It's the spiritual journey is to find that place to embrace the paradox. And we're all over it with this, of course. This is Buddhist teaching. There are many other teachings, but this is one I just find resonates and often resonates with Unitarian Universalists because we like to know. We like to know things. We like to know what's going to happen. We like to be able to study it and know it. And I still do that. But there's times when we don't know. And we are entering those times in our country, of course. We are entering those times in our lives. In the end, we always don't know, but that's really hard. We can't just go around all the time going, we don't know what's going to happen next. I think we would all be paralyzed. So it's a softening. And again, why I've been doing this, the earth, courage, calm abiding, for me is a softening. The other night I woke up and I just had this anxiety and I just remember thinking of Joe on the rope and I just sunk down more into my chest and softened. And just softened until I landed on that little snow shelf. And it was kind of like I could see that light out there, you know. So there's a softening. And it's okay. Sometimes we do have to protect ourselves. Sometimes we have to just like, oh, just cover my heart for a while. And I'm not saying that, but eventually the softening that allows us to move. So we do not have to blame others. We also do not need to repress our feelings. The practice is to just be with that, to soften into ourselves. Chodron loves to use this phrase called joyful curiosity. And I can get the curiosity. I'm not sure I can always get a joyful curiosity, but I find if I do start with curiosity, eventually it'll get joyful at some point. Our practice is to stay with the uneasiest and not solidify into just one view. And I remember someone telling me, and I might have shared this before with this congregation, but who had been to Selma, Alabama, and they said that they would just stand out. They were outside all through the night. There was music ongoing, and I noticed that the folks up in Minneapolis started with some music at times to just help bring them together. And then he said some of the Black women, the church women, would come out and they would bring sandwiches to all the protesters to nourish them. And there was one woman who would always go up to the guards who were there in their full gear and offer them a sandwich. And they'd always go, no, no. And this minister told me at one point, one of the guards said, "Thank you, ma'am." And he took the sandwich. And he said, I saw him change, that there was that humanity. We cannot always count on that. And so, obviously, from what is going on in Minnesota, but I think it's something we also have to remember, both to protect ourselves and also know that with those around us, as we make connections in Indianapolis and around, to look into the other's eyes and see their humanity if we're safe, if we're safe. How do we stay in the present moment? We slowly build our capacity to be there. I think it's important as we come into these times to build our capacity to be in the moment, to make the choices that we need to make, to know when we need to go show up someplace, whatever that is, you know, and when to stay inside our homes. And that type of discernment, we can't, it's hard when I'm in my fight or flight, when I'm really anxious and I'm not softened down, I can't be creative. I can't think of alternatives at that time. I can think this or this. And so I try to pay attention to myself. That's not a great time sometimes to make a decision. Sometimes we have to. But also having those moments where we come down and our creative minds, I mean, the brain works this way. The more relaxed we are, the more creative we can be. So, how do we learn to stay in the present moment? Chodron proposes two things, and I leave you with these words. Gentleness, she says, and a sense of humor. I love that. Be gentle with yourselves, with each other. When you're feeling safe, you can have a sense of humor, because that allows learning, it allows flexibility, gentleness, and a sense of humor. And I think those two things, gentleness and a sense of humor, if we have those in our lives, we then naturally have more gratitude, we have more courage, calm abiding. We are connected with the earth. So as we prepare to end today, I'm going to do the meditation one more time. And thank you for these vessels, these bodies we have, and all their limitations and complexities and simplicities. We look down in gratitude for the earth and connection with the earth. Our gaze is down. We are connected. I think of this also a time to honor my ancestors, our ancestors of all beings. And then you bring the energy up to look at what is. And that is courage. If it's too much, you go back down. Earth. You come back up. Courage. And with that courage, we also take the time to lie back into the cosmos, into the spirit, into all that is, that deep seeing, calm abiding. A place where all is possible, where love resides, as love is the spirit of this church. And that's our spiritual journey for today. A little bit of Buddhism, probably with my own Hoosier viewpoints tossed in. And I hope that that takes you into a place of being with that and being with your own soul and spirit. This was not a psychological sermon. I wasn't talking about the darkness as much of depression as the unknown. That's a whole nother sermon. But there is always a softening, always a softening. And if we can't soften ourselves, may we help one another. Thank you. And again, blessings for being here today.
Thank you so much, Reverend Mary Ann, for those words of wisdom and the softening practice. And this is clearly an in-between and not knowing time. So thank you. Your Hoosier Buddhism is much appreciated. As a reminder, as we come close to the end of the service, we will have coffee hour, and Nancy will host coffee hour, and everybody will be invited to unmute themselves. So at that point, so chatter all we wish. But this week we are sharing our offering plate with the Unitarian Universalists for Social Justice, UUSJ. UUSJ aligns with our UU values by advocating to Congress and to other elected officials for policies that align with our values. And those current priorities include preventing war in Venezuela, include promoting Medicare for all and full funding for critical social programs like SNAP and food stamps. And yes, the priorities include abolishing ICE funding. To contribute, you can go online, allsoulsindy.org. We find up in the upper right-hand corner a button, a link that says how to donate. And please indicate if your gift is a pledge payment or if it is for Share the Plate. So thank you all for your generosity in supporting the mission of All Souls. Thank you for your continued love for one another and for this world. The morning offering will now be given and will be gratefully received. We'll conclude with closing words from Reverend Mary Ann.
Again, thank you all for being here. Thank you for having the presence of All Souls congregation in Indianapolis. What a gift. What a gift you all bring. These words are based on words from my colleague Robert Doss. For all who seek God, Goddess, the great love that flows through this universe, may it go with you today. For all who embrace life, may life return your affection. And for all who seek a right path, my wish for you today is may it be filled with gentleness, a sense of humor, gratitude, courage, and compassion for yourself and the beings that share this planet. So may it be Shalom, Salam, Asubi.